welcome back. At least 10 people have died and 92 others missing in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo due to flooding. Local officials say the torrential rains caused the river to overflow its banks, thereby submerging buildings and people. The administrator of Masasi territory in Eastern Congo's North Kivu province said the emergency teams have been dispatched to the town of Behamwe to search for missing people. As the United Nations General Assembly enters its second day, Central African Republic's President Faustin Archange Touadera pleads with the world not to forget his country. Mr. Touadera asked the United Nations to bolster its peacekeeping force amid the growing violence that threatens to spin the country out of control. Thousands have died and a fifth of Central Africans have fled a conflict that broke out after mainly Muslim Seleka rebels ousted President Francois Bozize in 2013, provoking a backlash from Christian anti-Balaka militias. Although unrest has since subsided, fighting has spiked this year, and the United Nations warned this month that ethnic fighting could descend again into a much larger conflict if combatants are not disarmed. The violence continues despite a peace deal signed between the government and rival factions in Rome last month, and a 13,000-strong United Nations mission which will see its mandate renewed in November. An international ocean conservation and advocacy organization has accused the EU of wrongly allowing foreign ships from China and Europe to fish off the coast of West Africa. Well, this comes as several countries in West Africa attempt to put an end to foreign ships shipping illegally in their waters. The organization admitted that Western African coastal states are very vulnerable to illegal fishing, and that accounts for an estimated 40% of all fishes caught in the region. A senior director at Oceana complained that illegal large fishing vessels take away the food security that West African countries need to provide protein and nutrients for its citizens. To that end, a joint Navy exercise was conducted by the Nigerian and Togolese Navies with the French Navy as part of efforts to improving maritime security.
West African navies took part in joint trainings with French forces in the Gulf of Guinea as part of the efforts to boost security in the region's coast, spanning more than a dozen countries. This exercise had Navy officers from Nigeria and Togo going through various possible crime scenarios at sea. The Gulf of Guinea is believed to have some of the world's most under-policed waters, where maritime criminals smuggle drugs, hijack vessels, illegally fish, and sell stolen oil from Nigeria. There were anti-piracy exercises with the Nigerian Navy and another with the Togolese Navy on illegal fishing that is said to cost West African nations well over $1.3 billion each year.
The exercise we have done today is an exercise against illegal fishing. The fight against illegal fishing in the waters of the Gulf of Guinea, more precisely in the waters of Togo. Knowing that illegal fishing is a threat which actually affects the Gulf of Guinea. In our waters, it is very important for our structures and for our staff to be fully trained in order to fight against this type of threat.
Other exercises were also organized with the Marines of Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal. Since 2014, Côte d'Ivoire has acquired 3 new 33-meter French-built patrol vessels. Ghana, Benin and Togo have expanded their fleets. Cameroon, Senegal and Nigeria, which also maintain larger navies, are continuing to invest.
I believe that the level of the exercise is not the most important aspect. The important thing is the cooperation framework in which we are carrying out this exercise. It's about a cooperation framework between the local Marines and the Marines that are operating in the Gulf of Guinea. Our objective is to develop this cooperation and spirit of information exchange, of technical exchange.
This training comes ahead of a meeting of Navy chiefs in West Africa, Central Africa and France this week. It was aimed at bolstering a maritime community in the Gulf of Guinea to improve safety in the region. The meeting in Dakar, Senegal is expected to highlight the importance of collaboration between the Marines for effective protection of the Gulf of Guinea with reassurance of sovereignty for each coastal state over its maritime area.
What was an abandoned grain silo is now the largest museum of contemporary African art in the continent. The building, which is a spectacle of art, is a significant boost for Africa's artists whose work has for centuries been exported and exhibited more outside the continent than at home.
An old grain silo on the V&A waterfront of Cape Town, South Africa, has been transformed into the largest archive space for African artists on the continent. The Zeitz Museum of Contemporary Art, Zeitz MoCA, was developed as a home for the extensive collection of African art belonging to German businessman Jochen Zeitz, and will be growing its acquisitions from the continent's wealth of artists. The museum, which has 9 floors, 80 galleries and a rooftop sculpture garden, was designed by British architect Thomas Heatherwick. Without demolishing much of the building, professional sculptures carved through the century-old concrete of the tubes in the tower.
It felt really important that a museum here must be not following the model necessarily of a European art museum or a North American or an Asian art museum. Actually, we had this extraordinary thing that this was potentially going to be the first contemporary African art museum in the whole of Africa. And so how could we do something that felt really, really particular to this continent? And so we wanted something that hadn't existed before. And the original grain silo building became a good trigger to force that, because it was so odd to respond to, and it forced us to have unusual ideas to cope with its idiosyncrasy.
Many of Africa's top artists have exported their work abroad to find notoriety, but the Zeitz MoCA and its grand architecture is expected to pique the fascination of art enthusiasts around the world to come to Africa to see African art.
As Africans, and I suppose as artists as well, we've had the luck sometimes of having our work collected by people who are abroad, people who don't live within Africa or within South Africa. And right now, to have a space where the work is housed in South Africa with us as living artists being able to speak about our work and having people coming to look at the work within this space is really special. It's very important because I think it highlights the fact that we are creating interesting things and that there's a relevance to what we're doing as visual artists, and it puts Africa and African art on a different platform.
Since it was founded in 2002, the Zeitz collection has become one of the most representative collections of contemporary African art from Africa and the diaspora. John Zeitz says the work he has admired for most of his life had now found a permanent home where it could inspire artists and art lovers within the continent.
I think that was once an abandoned building. Well, that's it on Network Africa. Many thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.